Hello everyone, this is your host Sunayana Kachroo and welcome to another exciting episode of the Pashchim Litcast. One of the core philosophies of starting this project was to engage with the younger generation of people from South Asia who are living in other countries other than probably India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, and to connect with them to understand their perspectives, their stories, their challenges. And today is one such day where we will be talking to one author. She's a poet. Her name is Riya Toro, and she is a freshman and she is a high school student. Riya, actually, when I interviewed her, I have to admit that it was more of a learning session for me. The challenges that she faced at a very early age in her middle school and how she used those challenges and used writing as a way to address that, as a way to heal herself, and as a way to honestly, in a very raw form, talk about these issues. One of the questions that actually stayed with me long after I talked to her is when I asked her that how do you deal with toxic people around you? How do you deal with toxic friends? And I think her answer stayed with me. I would like you guys to pay attention to what she has to say, and I'm sure you will like it. Thank you so much. Ria, welcome to this Pashchim Litcast. We're very excited to have you as our guest today. I am personally, as a poet, looking forward to this conversation because a lot of your journey has been very inspiring to me as well. I've read your poetry, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. Ria, one of the questions that I had when I looked at your poetry is that I wanted to understand and kind of step back into your life and understand that how did this journey of you being a poet and you reading poetry and writing poetry.
Yeah, so actually, I was never really introduced to the topic of mental health on such a deep level until I hit about middle school. I never really knew the true meaning about poetry to begin with. So I used to just like around fifth or sixth grade, I used to just, scribble down random thoughts or just poem like little words of like nature or something random like that. But it was around, I think, like maybe like sixth grade, I started, really going through a lot with the pandemic and everything. I was just feeling too much and I just wanted to scribble down my thoughts again. And it was on a much deeper level. And during that time, I think I also, was going through a lot with people who I had known for a while. Um, and I think I used to also watch like a lot of shows and read books, and that's how I also discovered more about poetry. And I had a collection, but I didn't necessarily have confidence in what I was writing. So I think in school, around like seventh grade, I was struggling a lot towards the end of the year. And I had an opportunity of participating in like a art fiction and poetry competition. So I took part in it and I submitted a poem that came from the heart, and I ended up winning. And that's when I was like, okay, now I can maybe, actually put more into this. So it was around eighth grade, beginning of the year, when I had finalized all the poems, and I wanted to go ahead and publish it on Amazon.
So when did you actually publish your first book?
2023.
So both the books were published in the same year, 2023.
First one was like late, and then the second one came later. Yeah.
A lot of your poetry actually is a shade of dark. There are a lot of dark emotions that you talked about. You're not hiding behind phrases or from metaphors. It's very raw, it's very real, it's very honest. So one of the concerns as an artist that you may have had is what will people say if you share it with people? Will they judge you? So did you have any of these thoughts or concerns when you shared your poetry with people around?
Um, I like I said, like I never knew much about mental health, so I didn't know how stigmatized it was. Um, but I think I didn't ever once question, oh, what will people think if I, publish a book about on such a deep level? And I think my main goal is to just cut that stigma, because I still meet so many people who like get so ashamed to talk about it. But everyone goes through that emotion, like, and every single emotion I believe is valid. It's okay to feel. So I never once like was like, oh, I'm gonna be judged for this. I'm gonna get a lot of questions. And I did end up getting some of that, but I try to take it as a challenge, and I try to educate people on it as much as I can.
I'm resisting to use the word journey because I have to always remind myself that you're just a ninth grader. But your experience as a poet, as a writer, has been very vast. So I just wanted to understand that till now, whatever your failures, your struggle, and the hurt that you've gone through, all of that has been, how has that shaped you as a human being? How has that shaped you as a person? Do you think you would have been a different person had that not been your experience?
I think, it's like, I think one of the biggest thing in my life is like failure is what defines me. I think you just have to go through struggle. You have to fail. That's the only way that you can like actually transform into something else. I think, yes, obviously everyone goes through failure, struggles, and it hurts. But I think with time, I think I'm like really grateful that I've gone through all of that, because I don't think I would ever become the person I was today with all of those experiences, all the people I met, whatever they said to me. Um, and I think that what defines you is like what you do after failure. And I think that I call it that because it's like a whole journey going through whatever. Like you can struggle, but eventually you will, find the courage in you to truly transform. You will meet people. You never know what may come in your life after. And I think with time, just if you put in effort, you keep going on, you never give up, I think you can truly heal.
So, Riya, what is the source of your writing? What inspires you? Is it always what you have gone through or the experience that you have had with people? Uh, or are you able to go beyond that as well and write about things that primarily may not concern you or primarily may not be things that have happened to you? So, what is the source of your poetry? What inspires you to write?
Yeah, I think most of my writing definitely comes from like my own experiences. And I've met like a lot of people, and like obviously like we don't talk about mental health as much. But I think I love to read a lot. So I think through that I also can experience so many characters' lives. And I think like just the people I've met, like it's a huge variety. I think I learn from all the people around me. Like I pick up something from everyone, whether it be a small amount, a big amount, good or bad. But I love learning from people around me. Um, so it's kind of like I just, whenever I'm feeling the most, like there's something going on in me, I have a really hard time, taking it out in words and communicating with people. So I tend to just go for like poetry, because I feel like I'm not judged. I can like, really rely on it.
So basically, what you are saying is that so far poetry has been your confidant, a safe haven, or a non judgmental place where you can just express yourself, your emotions, and vent out without any, probably any repercussions to what that poem will not judge you. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the main things when I started writing, one of my main concern was what will my family say and what will they feel when they read about my most intimate thoughts? Because poetry is a very intimate thought for a person. So, did you have these concerns? What was the reaction of your family, from your sibling, or your friends that you really care about? What was their reaction? Were you concerned, and if you were, and how did you overcome that, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, I'm actually really fortunate. I have a really good family. My parents, they have always made sure that whatever I'm feeling is valid, that I have someone to talk to. Um, and they always say like something that stuck with me is that they always thank me for like, sort of bringing that awareness to even them about mental health, because even they didn't know it. Because from where they grew up, they weren't they didn't necessarily talk about it, and no one really knew about mental health. So it's like always a constant, like, they always assure me that I'm okay to feel whatever I want, that I can talk about it to anyone. And they've read my poems, and obviously they were worried, like, oh, like, why is our daughter going through so much? But it's also, they're really, like, proud of me, and they always constantly remind me that I'm worth it, that I'm strong, that I can do anything. And so I'm really fortunate that I have such a nice support system from even, like, my mom, my dad, my brother. They always are there for me, and it's always nice to have such a good support system. Yeah.
So I would like to go back to my previous question, and your response actually made me wonder and made me think that um, how have your struggles shaped you? How has your struggle shaped your thought process as you started writing, as you started experiencing and writing and sharing? How did that shape your thought process ahead? I know you always have been talking a lot about a very toxic environment around you, and that kind of pushed you in a lonely space and a place, and that is how you started writing. I just wanted to understand all of that, how this whole thing has shaped your thought process.
Yeah, I think I always, like, think that it's amazing to go through struggle, because I think the outcome of it is, like, it's amazing. Like, you can become someone completely different when you go through such struggle. And I think that always making sure that you have a purpose in life, and that you're ambitious, and that you're always going to go for it no matter what, that's truly what's most important. And I think that in this generation, I've seen so many people who may be, like, rude and toxic. And I think a lot of young teenagers meet quite people in their lives. But I think it's super important not to have such toxic people in your life. Like, if you ever meet someone like that, it's the best thing to do is just get rid of them. Because I think in this generation, that's, like, the biggest thing that sort of can give someone mental health issues, the type of people who you're around. And I think as a community, it's really important that we learn from each other, that we inspire each other every day. We're not jealous of each other's success, we add on to it. And I think that you're never going to always feel the same way. You will eventually recover. And I think the best thing about going through struggle is that you learn so much more about empathy, and you can give it to others. Like, I feel like now I can understand people's emotions much better, and I can, like, put that in my writing, or when someone's going through something, I can help them out, because now I know that it's really hard to go through something like that, so I can help them onto it too. So there's a lot of benefits to struggle, and I think it's really important to feel these emotions, because it's only going to benefit you in the long run.
You talked about toxic people earlier as well. Now, this is a very, I would say it's a personal question, but I also know a lot of people will probably relate to it. Um, it's that some of us or many of us have these moments where we can be toxic. But I'm not talking about that. What I want to understand is that many times when I look at the society, people of all ages, I see that sometimes they are trapped in associations, relationships, collaborations with people that are really toxic, that put them down, that put other people down. They talk, they gossip so much, they damage other people's reputations. And knowing, when you are in such kind of associations, you sometimes feel trapped. You want to leave, but you cannot, yeah, or you don't know how to. You have dealt with all of that, and how did you deal with it? And what is the way out of this? How can one break free from such associations and not be an enabler of a bully? How do you do that? And what has your experience been in this, in this chaos of emotions? What has your experience been?
Yeah, like, I think I've had, like, friends who I've been, like, really close with for years, and it was, like, super hard for me to disconnect with them. I think it took me almost, like, 8 years to do that. So but I think it's, like, having only like maybe one or two friends, I would say you're good. Like if you have two people who are genuinely happy for you, who really you don't have to even think before you tell them news about yourself, and who really tell you that they're proud of you each day and make sure that you feel loved, you'll have a much healthier life from that. And it's definitely really hard to like break away from friends sometimes. Especially me, I'm really sensitive, so like it's really hard for me to like hurt people's feelings or something like that. But I think it's really important and you have to do that. And I think finding that courage is the hardest thing, but you have to constantly remind yourself that you have your own self-worth, own self-respect, and you should never let that go down, because it's important to make sure that you're healthy everywhere, because that's how you can like achieve your goals and everything like that. um and it's just really it really like makes your life much more fresher if you're just not involved with these types of people, because I feel like that's one of the main reasons that you can truly destroy yourself. And I think closure for me is the most important thing. So I think if you're meeting people who you just don't click with or who are just constantly insulting you, I think the best thing is you have to address it in some way, and that's the hardest thing. But you just have to do it in some way. And the most important thing I feel like is bringing closure. So, because I think like if you don't have closure with your friends, um, people who just don't make you feel good, I think you'll always be the one who's hurting at the end. And I think coming on mutual grounds with people and just making sure that no feelings are hurt and just that you guys are on a casual level, I think that can be much healthier, because you both know that you're at an okay place, but you can also move on and find better people in your life.
Wow, what you said right now, I'm still processing that, and let me digest that because um, I never thought of it the way you said it, that we have to learn to live with such people and come to a common ground. Uh, I'm very sure a lot of people will get inspired by what you said, and an honest advice from someone who's gone through that. Being able to find a common ground without breaking the relationships, without burning the bridges, that's a very hard thing to do, but probably the right thing to do. So, thank you so much for that advice. I do want to go back to one of your poems that where you're talking about confusion, you're talking about trying to find meaning in the pieces together. Do you want to reflect on that a little bit of that emotion or and the poem as well?
Yeah, so first about the poem, I would say I think that life has so many you can go through so many struggles, and it can shatter you completely, and you just don't know which way to go from there. And I think that finding that strength to decide and come out of it and just put those pieces back together and just figure out a way for yourself is the strongest you can become from doing that. And I think that there's just so much confusion in life sometimes, and you don't know what you want, and you can be put down so many times. But just finding the courage to keep moving, to keep working towards your purpose is the most important thing ever.
So, what is the source, emotional source of your poem? We always hear a lot about grief and pain. A lot of artists kind of dwell a lot in pain because they feel that pain is a source of a lot of creativity. So, how does it help you to relate to another people now that you've gone through that? You've written about this. You also are a mental health advocate. How do you see yourself as a different person? Do you think it helps you to have this empathy while talking to others, while listening to what they're going through? How does that emotion help you deal with other people and with yourself as well?
Yeah, I think most of my poetry comes from like my own like emotions and experiences, because I feel like it's more deeper that way and I can really make a better poem that way. But I do have some family back in India or just people around me who I see them struggle, and I think grief is such a common emotion the ways we deal with it and the reasons for it are very different. And I think it's hard to understand the intensity of someone's pain, but it's important to understand that we all go through it. So I sort of try to, like when I see someone going through it, I try to think, oh, how would I feel if I was going through something like that? And I think just going through all these struggles has made me more empathetic and more understanding and connected with my feelings and emotions and other people's. And I feel like I don't write a lot on like what other people are going through because sometimes I find it hard to sort of connect as much as I can with my own emotions. But I definitely am working on developing it. But I do have some poems where, I've seen people or around me and I just feel motivated to write about it too.
So Ria, some of the poems that I read throughout your both the books actually, I found a lot of conflicting or contradicting emotion. I should say, some places you're saying that you're okay with being. You're okay being scattered into million pieces. Some places you feel that you want to put all of the pieces together as a whole so you can make sense of yourself. At some places you're okay to be alone and not with toxic people who are rude to you. And some places you do want someone to reach out to you and not throw you a rope, but give you a hand so you can they can reach out to you. So how do you make sense of all of these conflicting emotions? You feel you're true to those emotions at that point, and then you have a different emotion at a different time. How do you see all of this, as a person when you're reading, or as a reader when you're reading your own poetry? How do you see all of this?
Yeah, so I think teens, I think they have the most complicated feelings. At some point, they may feel really happy one day. Sometime they might feel really, really sad. And I've gone through that too. I think some days I feel really high, and then the next day I can feel really low. And I think I'm a person who I think I can like address my own emotions and sort of figure out what to do with them. But sometimes I do need some people around me. And I think a lot of teens have a hard time getting help. And I think it's hard to get help unless you allow yourself to get help. So I think it doesn't matter to me if people around me, like, will listen to me rant about my emotions for however long. Just people who can make me feel happy and distract me from whatever I'm going through and can just remind me that they love me and that they love my presence. I think that's enough for me. And I really wanted to touch on all of these conflicting feelings because I think everyone has gone through at least one of them. Like, I love writing and making sure that people relate to it in a way. I think the more people relate, the more they can understand that it's okay to go through it and that they're not the only ones. So I think, yeah, like there's a lot of complications around that age. Like you can you're growing a lot during that time. You meet really interesting people. You may be forced to do some things and not have the freedom to do what you want. So I think I just wanted to touch on almost everything. Sometimes when you feel like you can manage things on your own, sometimes you might be afraid to ask for help, and sometimes you just need people around you. So I wanted to touch like on all of those things.
Your parents are from India, right? Now, talk a little bit about that, because it's hard sometimes to understand the cultural amalgamation of two different cultures that you guys inherit. It has its own benefits, it has downsides to it. So, how do you see that journey, and how do you see that cultural mixing of two cultures? That you have inherited. How do you see all of that? I'm asking this question specifically because I see a lot of kids in that age. They have a lot of sometimes disassociation, sometimes association with the culture. So they go through a lot of ups and downs. So talk a little bit about this, and how can somebody navigate that?
Yeah, so I think like my parents, they came from India, and that there it's like completely opposite of here in terms of mental health. I think back then they were like they didn't know much about it, and they were like, oh, don't worry, ignore this, you have this to do, this to do, this to do, focus on that, go ahead in life. But now it's like they're trying to unlearn that, and that if you're not in the right mindset, then you can't do things that you really want to, because it's you just are in that space and you just can't do anything about it. And I think many parents sort of go through that. It's like hard for both the child and parent. I think it's hard for parents to sort of find that understanding within their parent and within their kids, because they weren't so used to that back then. And I think that it's important that the more voices are heard about mental health, the more people are educated on it, so that parents know what to expect with their teens or kids and everything. And I think even I'm sure my parents have gone through a lot of struggle, with their emotions and everything, but they didn't necessarily talk about it, and they may have just kept it inside them. And I think I try to also, let them know that it's okay to go through that. Like, life doesn't just have to be a 24/7 work job. It's important to have a balance. It's important to socialize, do things that you like, and not necessarily just do things that you're forced to do.
Riya, you are, as we talked earlier, that you have two published books. So, can you talk a little bit about both the books? What are their titles? How did you pick the titles that you picked? And then, after that, probably we can read some of you can read some of your poems and share that some of your poems with our viewers today.
Yeah, sure. So my first book is called Weaken Me. It's much more like on the darker side than my second book. It was a 3-year journey, I think, writing that book for me, because at that point I was going through a lot. I didn't know what I was feeling and if it was okay for me to feel this way. I had no knowledge on mental health. I didn't know that people could feel this much. And I didn't know other people were going through that as well. So, going into it, I just kept writing and writing, and I had a huge collection by around like eighth grade. So choosing the title was really hard for me, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know how to, like publish online, how to get it out there, how to illustrate my own cover and everything. So eventually I came up with Weaken Me, which behind like my thought process was there are a lot of demons in our life who can put us down, who can make us the weakest version of ourselves. And that was sort of that thought process behind it. And as for the cover, it was like I designed it on my own. I It's with like two hands that are trying to reach each other but can't. And that's sort of like, I think it can be seen as like in multiple ways. Like you can see it in a little literal way, like you're trying to get help, but it's hard for you to. Um, and I think that was sort of a way for me to say that there is help out there if we're only courageous enough to see it and like use that help. So that was sort of my thought process behind, the cover and the title of that one.
Did you self-publish that?
Yeah, I self-published that
Okay,
one.
okay.
Yeah.
And what, like, how did you do? Who helped you in that, or did you figure that out yourself?
Yeah, no, so I spoke to a friend, and she had also self-published a book at the time a few years ago, and I was really confident with my work, and I really wanted to get it out there. So I, got some information from her, and I published through KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. Yeah, so that was where I could, like design my own cover, figure out my title, upload my PDF and everything like that. So I was able to do everything the way I wanted. And I did use the same format for my second one too. So that one I took more on like a positive side. I sort of, I mean, not all are positive, but it's like the healing process. You can still feel a lot. You're never going to be 100% okay. You will still go through so many struggles. Life is never ending. So I sort of took that approach. And after my first book, I still went through a lot of things. I still met a lot of different people who affected me in some different ways. So I sort of used those experiences and also others around me, and I sort of came up with that, and I called that book "Blues Away," which is like just sort of like with time, like you will heal, and there is a bright side to everything. It just takes a while, but you will get there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think once I started reading Weaken Me and then Blues Away, I could feel that Blues Away came from a place of healing, on the process of healing. It looked like there were still darker shades, but there was also, you also talked about light at a distance, I guess, that you could see. So that was really beautiful, and I could see there was a journey within you. If I could, without even knowing you, I could see that the author has had a journey and they're at least moving in the right direction. So sometimes that hand that you talked about, that hand is probably not somebody else, it's finding that strength within you as well, right? I do want you to read a few of your poems, whichever you want to share with us today. I would love to hear some of your poetry.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll read two from Weaken Me and then one from my second book, Blues Away. Metal melts as it touches fire, slowly shaping into a sword. Give it time to learn and find its place, and let the burning pass, giving you a special weapon. You can see nothing in her, but when she's in pain, deep in her eyes she's quite intimidating, and her heart is raising the tide while she still keeps her secret. Don't hold sand too tight where it burns and bruises your fingers. Let it loose. Don't force something or someone to like or be with you.
Do you want to read some more?
In the depths of the dark sea, waves rage and sway, awakening for sun's rays. In the heart, a wish needed to be kept, so all her scars could be swept. Along the winds, there's a faint whisper as she asks her breaths where she can meet herself, close to existence, far from death.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. There's one poem which I really liked. It's very short again. It says, I'm terrified of walking away. I'm terrified of walking away and finding where to go. That's really beautiful, Ria. Because usually people are terrified of walking away and getting lost. But here you're saying that I'm terrified of walking away and finding where to go. Do you want to talk a little bit about what were you trying to say here?
Yeah, so like um I around that time I just thought that I was constantly going to feel hurt. I was never going to really like find inner peace in within me. Um, but I still decided that I have things to achieve in my life. I have so much more that I want to do. There were times when I was like, "Oh, I'm just 15. Like I've lived enough." But definitely not. There's a much larger path ahead of me, and there's so many more things that I have, like completing high school, going to college, pursuing dreams of mine. And I think every new phase of your life, every year you go through, it's kind of like a novel, like you have chapters in your life. You're going to see some downfalls. There's going to be different plot twists in your life. You'll meet new characters that you didn't expect. And I think that's the excitement of life when you don't know what's happening and you just sort of keep living and keep going and just doing the things you like, and you'll end up in a lot of unexpected places, and some will be nice and some will be bad, but that's the only adventure that you get from life.
Wonderful. I totally agree that it's the unknown is scary, but it's the unknown that makes the life beautiful, pleasant, interesting, mysterious,
Yeah.
and all the shades. Even though while we're going through it, it feels painful. A lot of creative people are often find themselves in lonely spaces, and I think that is sometimes a cry from your creative spirits for you to kind of disassociate and probably go into the creative area to write. It's hard, but it's also a blessing, right? Think about at your age you're writing this poetry, and these are actually life lessons as well. This is you're chronicling the darker and the lighter shades of life. If I am at my age, if I tell a teenager my wisdom or my experience, they may not relate to it, but
Mhm.
they'll relate to you, because there is an honesty of you having gone through it and found your way out. So think about all the experiences and all the people that can actually benefit from your experience, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if somebody wants to buy these books, where should they go?
You can buy it on Amazon. That's where it is. I'm trying to sort of get it out in as many bookstores as possible around my area as well, so you can look.
So, Ria, before we end this interview, I do want to ask you a very interesting question, which I wanted to ask you earlier, but I wanted to keep it for towards the end. Do you read other poets? If yes, then who is your favorite poet?
Yeah, I love to explore many poets. I've seen some random ones on social media. I don't know their exact names, but I love Rupi Kaur and Atticus. Those are my two favorite poets that I have their books and I love reading them.
Well, congratulations on your journey so far as a writer, as an author. I do feel that there is a short story writer hidden somewhere within you,
Thank you.
because a lot of your poems are very descriptive and they're like small anecdotes.
Mm.
So probably that is something you can think about. But whatever you're doing, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you for having me.